If the dictionary means what it says, language is the means of communication in which sounds are combined into meaningful units to convey thoughts and feelings. The dictionary also says language is written symbols representing these sounds, and all the sounds and the written symbols representing them make up a system by which the members of a nation, tribe, or other group communicate with one another. Now, please, you can relax because we won't spend very much time discussing the rules of grammar, or verb tenses, or where to put prepositions, or what happens to I's and E's before or after C. Nor will we try to sort out why an adverb is an adverb, or how adjectives modify nouns, or anything else like that. What I will suggest, however, is that based on that general definition, music qualifies as a language, don't you think? So those of us who fancy ourselves to be musicians, and many of us are to a greater or lesser degree, we are multilingual. We all know, of course, that any language has rules and guidelines and colloquialisms and any number of irregularities of one sort or another. And so does the language of music. Music can make you swoon. It can be romantic. It can be deeply spiritual, or obscenely jazzy, or velvety jazzy, or martial, or militant, or funny, or happy, or sad. Music can be triumphant, victorious, funereal, or it can make you want to jump up and dance. And it can be a whole lot more than all of that. People with special gifts compose music, except for a few who aren't particularly gifted but compose music anyway. But for the composer, it is vital to write very specifically what he or she is trying to communicate and to expect it to be played accordingly. It is also vital for those of us who reproduce music to reproduce the music from the composer's score, to endeavor to play exactly what the composer has written. There are some musicians, however, who think that they can improve on what the composer has written and try to modify it or improve upon it one way or another. Like I did in that last piece when I came in 2 measures early. Just composed my own little spot in there. Hopefully nobody noticed the difference. But when we do that, it's arrogant and rude for us to do it. But that doesn't seem to stop some people. Take, for example, one Paulo Esperanza, the bass trombonist with the Sinfónica Mayor de Uruguay, located in Montevideo, Uruguay. He decided in August of 1998 to make his own contribution to the cannon shots fired as a part of the orchestra's performance of Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture at an outdoor concert. I brought a prop. This is Paul. No, it's not Paul. Pablo, it's Paul. Just stand there, okay?
Okay. I can do that.
In complete seriousness, Paulo placed a large ignited firecracker, which was the equivalent in strength to a quarter of a stick of dynamite, into his aluminum straight mute, and then stuck the mute into the bell of his quite new Yamaha inline double valve bass trombone. That's a bass trombone, isn't it?
This is a bass trombone.
Right. Later, from his hospital bed, he explained to a reporter through bandages on his mouth, "I thought the bell of my trombone would shield me from the explosion, and instead would focus the energy of the blast outwards and away from me, propelling the mute high above the orchestra like a rocket." However, Apollo was not up on his propulsion physics, nor was he qualified to use high-powered artillery. And in his haste to get the horn up before the firecracker went off, he failed to raise the bell of the horn high enough so as to give the mute enough arc to clear the orchestra. What actually happened should serve as a lesson to us all during those delirious moments of divine inspiration. First, because he failed to sufficiently elevate the bell of his horn, the blast propelled the mute between rows of players in the woodwind and the viola sections of the orchestra, amazingly missing the players and straight into the stomach of the conductor, driving him off the podium and directly into the front row of the audience. Fortunately, the audience were sitting in folding chairs, and thus they were protected from serious injury, for the chairs collapsed under them, passing the energy of the impact of the flying conductor backwards into the rows of people sitting behind them, who in turn were driven back into the people in the row behind them, and so on, like rows of dominoes. The sound of collapsing wooden chairs and the grunts of people falling on their behinds increased logarithmically, adding to the overall sound of brass cannons and brass playing as constitutes the closing measures of that wonderful overture. Meanwhile, all of this unplanned choreography notwithstanding, back on stage, Apollo's Waterloo was still unfolding. According to Apollo, just as he heard the sound of the blast, time seemed to stand still. Everything moved in slow motion, he said. Just before I felt searing pain to my mouth, I could swear I heard a voice with an Austrian accent say, "For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction." Well, this should come as no surprise, for Apollo had set himself up for a textbook demonstration of this fundamental law of physics. Having failed to plug the lead pipe of his trombone, point to the lead pipe of your trombone. That good, well done. He allowed the energy of the blast to send a superheated jet of gas backwards through the mouth pipe of the trombone, which exited the mouthpiece, burning his face and lips. The pyrotechnic ballet was not over yet. The force of the blast was so great, it split the bell of his shiny Yamaha right down the middle, turning it inside out, while at the same time propelling Apollo backwards off the riser. And for the grand finale, as Apollo fell backwards, he lost his grip on the slide of the trombone, allowing the pressure of the hot gases coursing through the horn to propel the trombone slide like a double golden spear into the head of the third clarinetist, knocking him unconscious. The moral of this story is the next time you hear someone in the trombone section, "Hey everyone, watch this." Be careful. So is there a point to be made from this? I think so. Tchaikovsky had every right to expect that competent musicians would endeavor to play exactly what he had written to communicate the message he was conveying in the 1812 overture. From those of us who choose to live our earthly lives as residents of the kingdom of God, God has every right to expect us to follow the score for the anthem of his kingdom. Unlike some languages, the rule of the symphony God has composed for our lives are really quite simple. 10 primary commandments set the stage for the tender story of his love for us, which morphs into a quiet movement depicting the silent night when Christ was born. This is followed by a long, ponderous movement which feels like it's 30 years long. And that movement is followed by a grueling and agonizing, traumatic vibration of sounds that sound like huge nails being driven deeply into wood, ending in a death-like silence and a long, grand pause. God's symphony ends with a sudden and overwhelming crescendo of miraculous, never-before-heard chords, and the rhythm seems to literally form words in an altogether different language, which proclaim, "Up from the grave he arose," like a mighty triumph o'er his foes. There are lots of other languages to choose, but the language of the music of God's Creator, Preserver, and Governor Symphony is unparalleled by any of them. In the program notes accompanying the score of God's masterful work, Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me." We will be smart to just play our part the way it's been written for us.